Shazam 2 is actually a really good family movie, and I'll explain that in a moment, but I just want to tell you that this movie was good from the opening scene. It didn't even have to get going. It was great out of the gate. I went in with like rock bottom expectations. I'd heard some positive chatter, but I didn't believe it, and you might not believe it either, even still. But it's a good movie. It's a really good family movie. Now, what I mean by that is that it can't compete with the big comic book movies. Do not think that that's what it is. And I don't think it's even trying to be that. Instead, this is more in line with Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Night at the Museum, Jumanji, and I would also call back The Mummy. I was watching Brendan Fraser recounts his famous roles the other day, and I was reminded of how good The Mummy was, particularly the first two installments. And I mentioned The Mummy in particular because, like that franchise, Shazam continues to be surprisingly dark. What? Just like in the first installment, a lot of people die. And not just in the abstract. I was surprised, yet again, with how far Warner Brothers let David Sandberg go. It's the kind of edginess that was all the rage in 1980s kids movies, both scarring and delighting a generation. And David Sandberg is working to bring that back thanks to his horror background. You can definitely sense his horror background. The best thing, though, I think about Sandberg's work here is that he takes it all so seriously, and the film benefits enormously as a result. Sandberg truly believes in the story that he is telling. His actors do, and therefore we do as well. There's never this is a paycheck gig, or this is a silly comic book movie, or this is a family movie, like who's gonna see this? They're like, this is an awesome movie. This is a great story that needs to be told. And you're like, you know what? Maybe it does. So what story are they telling? Well, again, it's not just a story for families, but it's a story about family. You could not ask for a better family film. I mean, I think a lot of people would enjoy this movie, but particularly families. This is great. Really great family movie. Fast and Furious even gets a shout out, and in that vein, it's about the family that you make. I think a lot about what they say about the foster system is really nice and very moving. It is, and also the movie delivered a lot of hard truths about, families in the first film as well, which this film is, still dealing with, which is also good. It's a delight and actually quite moving to see not just the Shazam family working together. The first act bridge sequence is fantastic. I mean, this movie, again, hits the ground running. I was like, wow, this is a very good action superhero sequence. When the Shazam family's zipping around, it looks really cool. You're like, you would think it would be lame, but instead you're like, I kind of like this. But also when they're together as teenagers, their teenage counterparts, that's also great. I love the dynamic, and actually in many ways reminds me of It, with an offbeat group of friends, including Jack Dylan Grazer, thrown together to fight a legit, terrifying, and powerful villain. The darker tone is also similar. Now, Andy Muschietti, who directed It, also came from, also of course does horror, and now he's also at DC, directing the upcoming Flash movie. See, Walter Hamada is the one who brought these directors over because he used to head up horror, and then he was brought over to DC, and he was like, let me bring this talent with me. And it's actually a very good fit because of the darker tone for DC. And that, by the way, the screenwriter for Shazam shared the fact that, Billy finding out the truth about his mother, which was not great, was Walter Hamada's idea. So, even though Walter Hamada, again, as we've discussed, made a horrible mistake with how he handled the Ray Fisher situation, that doesn't mean he was a bad overall executive, and that sometimes studio suits do contribute and do a good job with the product. Now remember the awesome boardroom scene from the first Shazam, which Walter Hamada let them keep. That's when I decided that movie was cool. I was like, this is amazing that this is in this movie and it's so well done. Well, this movie is that boardroom scene on steroids. And it's fantastic. I loved it. That boardroom scene, again, I couldn't believe that Warner Brothers let Sandberg put it in the movie. And I'm surprised, once again, how edgy they allow him to make the second film, that it goes even further than that. But I loved it. I think it makes the film not only a great family film, which is really going to stick in the minds of some kids, but I think it makes it still enjoyable for all ages, because it's not too kiddie. On that note, the VFX in this movie are excellent. excellent. Top-notch quality. You don't get better visual effects than you have in this film. And which is great, because we've been watching a lot of bad VFX lately. You totally believe the Shazam family's powers and their enemies' powers, the daughters of Atlas. I love Greek mythology, so that was fun too. The dragon even looks fantastic, as does the big third act battle. That was very impressive. And those unicorns that seemed stupid in the trailer make total sense in the context of the film. And wow, wait until you see the Skittles product placement. We've been seeing a lot of product placement lately, but this is the most blatant and aggressive product placement I have ever seen. And the sheer audacity of it makes it hilarious. Wow, you are like, I can't believe you went there. I have to respect it. The set design is also very impressive, especially the wizard's lair, which has now been taken over by the Shazam family. A recent comic series from Jeff Johns explored different magical worlds that the Shazam family could visit. And I thought it was ridiculous in the comic, totally over the top, and I was like, what is this, Willy Wonka? But when I saw the sequel kind of touch on that just a bit, I was like, oh, maybe it is doable, because I kind of like it here. I said everyone in the cast does a good job, but you know who really makes this movie work? Helen Mirren. Helen freaking Mirren! Which is so funny because she's thrown so much shade at this movie in the press. She's like, I have no idea what the movie was about. And we were all like, did you even read the script? I had an industry friend of mine text me and say, I bet she only read her lines. And if she did, that just shows even more what a great actress she is, because you would never know it based on her performance. She's incredible. She gives it 110%, and it's so awesome to see. She gives it validity. You're like, wow, this is a serious movie about a Greek god, because look at Helen Mirren. I mean, it's fantastic. She also looks great. It was amazing. At first, with all the cool Greek mythology stuff, they open in Athens, and I was like, oh, Athens looks pretty great. I was like, why aren't we just doing a Wonder Woman story? Why are we wasting this on Shazam? But as the movie progressed and they made the Shazam story so interesting and endearing, I was like, okay, let's do this. Now, yes, Wonder Woman does show up eventually. There's also a gag with her earlier in the film, which I thought was as in poor taste as the gag that was in Joss Whedon's Justice League. So I didn't care for that. But Wonder Woman herself does show up as Warner Brothers has already revealed in the ad campaign, which is unfortunate. I guess they did that because that rumor got out that they were using a body double instead. And I think they use both here, to be honest with you. You'll understand once you see the movie. But it was weird because in the edit of the actual film, they pause and turn up the music because they're expecting a big reaction from the crowd. But since we already know that Wonder Woman's showing up, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'll be curious to know if you get a reaction in your screening. But yeah, it was just a little bit awkward. What else was awkward is that with such a good cast here, such a natural cast, Gal Gadot looks even worse as an actress. I don't think she's going to recover from Wonder Woman 1984. I mean, and I even liked parts of that movie, as I said, but I understand why fans in the audience, so much rallied against it. But even I was like, I can't defend her acting in this movie. It's awful. And she comes across very poorly here as well. Although so does Lucy Liu. And Lucy Liu has a vibrant career, but Gal Gadot is like even worse. And then also, I think that we kind of feel we're moving on from the Snyderverse at this point. I know some of you don't want to, but for the most part, I think everyone else is ready. So when she shows up, you're like, oh man, I thought we were moving on. So it doesn't really work. The Shazam cast should feel good though, because they were never that involved in the Snyderverse, and they're so good here that they make an excellent case for keeping them around. As I told you, I don't believe that they have contracts to stick around, but maybe they should draw those up. I mean, we'll see how it does at the box office. But boy, the Shazam movies are affordable. It was recently reported that this movie cost just about $100 million to make, and it looks better than all the past few Marvel movies and Black Adam, although to be fair, Dwayne Johnson is a producer on this movie. His $7 production is a producer here. But those movies all cost double, and they don't look as good as this film. The script is also very funny, with Zachary Levi doing some very strong work anchoring the film. However, I know that a lot of you, understandably, are not big fans of Levi right now, but you should know that while he anchors the film, he's not really the lead of the movie. A lot of screen time is given to Jack Dylan Grazer, coming off some fantastic work, voice work in Super Sons. He's so talented. And it's also great to see Djimon Hounsou with not only a much larger part this time, but getting to do comedy too. He's very funny. Everyone who watched What If knows he can be very funny, and he's great here. Lucy Liu, as I said, is unfortunately kind of wooden. Not great, especially next to Helen Mirren, who's, again, at the top of her game and doing such a great job. Also, Rachel Zegler does a better job. Lucy Liu just comes across very poorly standing next to both of them. Rachel Zegler is the compassionate sister who maybe isn't so into her sister's evil plan. This is Zegler's only her second big movie, but she blends in perfectly with the rest of the cast. She does a very nice job. As for the rest of the Shazam family, everyone, both the teens and the adult versions of the characters, are just as likable as they were in the first film and get moments to shine. Grace Fulton, I think, is particularly good as Mary, the most responsible and mature member of the group, which is maybe why she doesn't change into an adult when she Shazams. I love her costume. She looks fantastic. I love that high collar. I was like, oh, where'd you get that? And she has some great line readings. I thought her line readings were fantastic. She really made herself stand out. And Pedro's LGBT status is also explored and beautifully welcomed by his brothers and sisters in a small but poignant moment. Led by Levi, by the way, who handles it absolutely perfectly. I thought it was really nice. I love Darla. She was one of my favorites in the first film. And while Megan Good and Faith Herman don't have a lot of screen time in the sequel, they do stand out whenever they are on screen. Please note, by the way, there are 2 end credit scenes, and we will discuss them in a separate video. One's mid-credits, and then the other one is at the very, 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 very end. So that's my non-spoiler review of Shazam Fury of the Gods. Again, a fantastic family film that I think a lot of people can enjoy. I would even see another Shazam film, to be honest with you, but we'll see how this one does at the box office. It's not tracking to do particularly well. Peter Safran produced this movie. He's produced a number of DC movies, also Aquaman. So it might give one hope for the new DC studios, considering how good this film is. But is there a path forward for these smaller fringe characters? Marvel was able to do it for a while, but they're starting to struggle with some of the fringe characters they're trying to introduce right now. And we all know that that's DC Studios' strategy, small fringe characters, like Shazam. But is there any money there? Even when the film is fantastic. We'll see this weekend. All right, so again, that's my non-spoiler review of Shazam Fury of the Gods. Share your thoughts down below. I know some of you have already seen it. Don't spoil anything. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.